Overwatering plants is why your rosemary keeps dying when you water it so faithfully. You gave it a drink every single day you never once forgot, and still it went gray, sulked, and gave up. Here is the hard truth. You did not neglect that plant. You loved it to death. With a whole group of herbs, the kindest thing is to put the can down and walk away. I am McCall. I drive buses in Belfast. Walk away. To understand why kindness kills them, you have to know where these plants grew up. Rosemary, lavender, thyme, sage, oregano. Picture where they come from in the wild. Not a lush, green, rainy place like ours. They come from the Mediterranean. Dry, rocky hillsides, thin, poor, gritty soil that water drains straight through, baking sun overhead, and long, dry summers with barely a drop of rain for months. Now, a plant that evolves in a place like that does not just tolerate drought, it is built for it. Rosemary has narrow, needle-like leaves with a waxy coating, all designed to hold on to every scrap of moisture and lose as little as possible. Lavender has silvery, hairy foliage that reflects the fierce sun and traps a little humid air against the leaf. These are survival tools for a harsh, dry life. Their roots learn to hunt deep and wide for scarce water and to sit happily in gritty ground that never holds a puddle for long. So when you take a plant that spent thousands of years learning to survive a drought, and you give it a cozy drink every single day in soft, wet Ireland, you are not being kind. You are dropping a desert lizard into a fish tank. It was never built for all that water, and it has no way to cope with it. Everything that makes this plant tough on a Greek hillside, the lean roots, the waxy leaves, the love of drought, turns into a weakness the moment it is standing in wet British ground. So what actually happens inside the plant when you overwater it? It does not drink itself to death, it suffocates. This is the part almost nobody knows. Roots do not just need water, they need air too. Down in the soil, roots breathe through tiny air pockets between the crumbs of earth. When you water every day and the soil never dries out, those air pockets stay flooded, and the roots simply cannot get any oxygen. They begin to drown. And once they are drowning and weak, a whole cast of rot, causing fungi in the soil move in on the soft, dying roots. And that is root rot. Here is the fact I want you to nail to your shed wall. For rosemary and lavender, root rot from too much water kills far more plants than any pest or insect ever does. Let that sink in. It is not the green fly. It is not the caterpillar. It is the watering can, held by a kind and worried gardener. And the cruel twist is that a drowning plant looks exactly like a thirsty one. The leaves droop and go a sad gray, so the panicked gardener sees the sulking plant, thinks it must need more water, and gives it another drink. That extra kindness is the final push. When a Mediterranean herb looks poorly, your first suspect should always be too much water, never too little. Now here is where it gets properly British, because our biggest danger to these herbs is not the summer at all, it is the winter. Everyone worries about their herbs in a summer dry spell, but a Mediterranean herb can shrug off a dry summer standing on its head that is its home turf. What it genuinely cannot survive is a cold, wet, waterlogged winter, and that, sadly, is exactly what a lot of British gardens serve up. Think about our heavy soils, the clay so much of the country sits on. In winter, that clay holds water like a sponge and stays cold and sodden for months on end. A rosemary plant sitting in cold, wet clay from November through to March is not resting. It is standing with its roots in a bucket of iced water, half drowned, week after week. The rot sets in slowly through the winter, hidden underground, and then in spring the plant just fails to come back. And every year gardeners blame a hard frost for that loss. But 9 times out of 10, it was not the cold that did it was the wet. A dry rosemary can take a real hard frost, A soaking wet one gives up. There is cruel physics in it too. Water expands as it freezes, so sodden soil and waterlogged roots swell and tear when a frost finally arrives, while dry tissue comes through unharmed. So the secret to keeping these herbs alive through a British winter is not fleece and cloches, it is drainage. Get the water away from the roots before winter and the frost loses most of its bite. So how do you actually keep these plants happy? The whole approach flips upside down from how you treat a thirsty tomato. Rule 1, let them dry out. Between waterings, let the soil go properly dry. Push a finger in, and if there is any dampness down there at all, you wait. You only water when it is bone dry, and even then you water less than you think. When in doubt, do not. Rule 2, drainage, drainage, drainage. This matters more than watering ever will. If you have heavy clay, do not just plant a rosemary straight into it. Dig in loads of horticultural grit and sharp sand to open the soil up. Or better still, plant it on a slight mound so water runs away from the crown. Rule 3. For pots, get it right from the start. Use a gritty, free-draining compost. Mix in extra grit. Make sure there is a big drainage hole. And never ever leave the pot standing in a saucer of water. That saucer is a death trap. And rule 4, the free one. Give them the sunniest, most baked spot you have got. Full sun is not a luxury for these herbs. It helps the soil dry between waterings and keeps the whole plant healthy. A newly planted herb does need a little water to settle in for its first few weeks, that is fair enough. But once it is established, a season or so in, you should be backing right off and letting it fend for itself. Sun and sharp drainage do 90% of the work here. The watering can barely get a look in, and that is exactly how these plants like it. And now for the loveliest part, the reward for your tough love. Being a little mean with the water does not just keep these herbs alive, it makes them taste better. Here is why. That gorgeous smell and flavor, the piney hit of rosemary, the calm scent of lavender, comes from aromatic oils the plant makes and stores in its leaves. And the plant makes those oils partly as a defense, a response to a hard, stressful, sun-baked life. When you grow a herb lean, in poor soil and strong sun, a little thirsty, it concentrates those oils and the flavor turns rich and intense. When you pamper it with rich soil and daily water, it does the opposite. It grows fast, soft, and leafy, and the leaves come out watery and bland. There is a reason the rosemary clinging to a dry Greek hillside smells stronger than the sad, floppy one in a well-watered pot by your back door. The tough one has poured its energy into flavor, the pampered one into soft, wet growth. So this is one of those rare and wonderful cases in gardening where doing less really is doing more. Less water, poorer soil, more sun, and you get a plant that is both tougher and far tastier. It is the opposite of everything we learned about tomatoes, where steady water was the whole game. With these herbs, a little hardship is the seasoning. Kindness, it turns out, was never really kindness at all. He was like kindness at all. So where does watering kit fit in for a plant that hates being watered? Honestly, more carefully than for anything else on this channel. If you grow Mediterranean herbs in pots, and I do, the most useful thing I can say is that they belong on their own zone, set to a small drink at long intervals, and kept well away from the thirsty crew like basil and mint that want watering every day. On my own tap, the herbs sit on one zone of a Johgee 4-zone timer, ticking over rarely, while the salad leaves drink daily on another. But let me be straight with you, if a pot of rosemary on a sunny sill is your only herb, do not buy a timer for it. It might want watering once a fortnight, and a can does that perfectly. This is genuinely the plant that needs automatic watering the least. The kit only earns its place when you are juggling thirsty herbs and dry ones on the same tap and cannot be home to tell them apart.